Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
We don't have to click today because we've got Barry here. Thank you so much for coming again, Barry. Pattaya and fake news.
Okay, thank you. You notice that even the Pattaya City Expat Club is guilty of fake news. Have a look at the photo they used for me to do the advert for today in their newsletter, taken 10 years ago, and I was 30 kilos higher than I am now. It just shows you. I hope it was an accidental fake news, not a deliberate. Anyway, we all know about fake news, and you've only had to listen to Donald Trump or watch the latest what's happening at the Cambodian border, and it is all political propaganda. But I think fake news itself, particularly as it applies to Pattaya, has a more diversified sort of origin and parameter, and maybe that'll come out a bit in the course of the next half hour or so. I'm going to start with something fairly serious. Press the button, please. You know, the first example of fake news in history was, thousands of years BC in the Ten Commandments. Have you ever looked at the Ten Commandments? Oh, we're all right, we go back to the Ten Commandments later. I wanted to start with this because it is an example of fake news which was on the internet and several social apps a couple of weeks ago. And it purports, of course, to show hundreds, if not thousands of Indians on the beach, and it's a collage, actually, of photos put together of several. If you wanted any evidence it's fake news, you have to look at the electronic sign up there, Pattaya. There isn't one, of course. And this is possibly an attempt to spread fake news as propaganda, to say, well, Pattaya is an awful place, maybe there's a racism element there. It's an attempt to stop people coming to Pattaya, to downgrade it, maybe it's against Thailand. Several people on Facebook suggested that it might be the Cambodians, the evil Cambodians, spreading nonsense in order to doom Pattaya and the whole of the Thai tourist industry. And maybe that's all right, I don't know. It's not. You notice, by the way, that it's from Thai press originally, repeated by the English press, but its origins are Thai, not Farang. I mean, in the Thai language, that is. It could be that, or it could be other things, couldn't it? It could be clickbait. Clickbait is an attempt to make you press the button on your computer, and you can make money out of clickbait. There are people who make money either through advertisements or negotiating cleverly with Google, and they are paid by the number of hits. It could be put up by someone who couldn't give a damn what you think about Indians and Pattaya. All they want is the click in order to enhance their wages. Or it could even, I suppose, be some sort of weird joke. It would be a racist joke, but the fact I find it offensive isn't the point. It could be an attempt to pander to people whose interests would be in stereotyping the subcontinent in that way. I'm just making the point that you can't assume always that what you think it's all about is necessarily what everyone else would think about. But there we go. There is a concept now in the media about fake news. It's called shrug and scroll, sorry, other way around. It's called scroll and shrug. That is, you spend all day looking at your mobile phone, usually depressing yourself, and you go down the news one at a time, you know, glance at them, maybe faintly smirk at that, and then move on to the next one. Scroll and shrug. Is it actually influencing people? Does it make people not want to come to Pattaya? Does it actually make people racist or whatever? It's a matter of opinion. I think the case is by no means proved that people are quite so naive as is sometimes suggested. There is a tradition in Pattaya of another sort of fake news, and that is satire and jokes that are meant to be laughed at. For many years, maybe 20, maybe more, Peter might know, the editor of the Pattaya Mail who's over there, maybe 30 years, every April 1st, or round about then, there's always been a joke about Pattaya. I just will give you a couple of them from a long time ago. Hit, please. Okay. Don't tell me we'll get that for the next half hour, will we? No. Not that one, you know. It should be driving on the right. That's it. Yeah. One of the myths, which was put about 10 years ago by the Thai media, by the way, not the Farang here media, was the idea that in 12 months' time, Thailand was going to go over to the left-hand side of the road, or the opposite side. You have to drive, you know, put the driving seat on the other side, so that we'd be like Cambodia and Laos, Philippines and America. It'd be so much more convenient, said this article in the Thai press. And if you were very clever and booked your appointment for your new driving license, because everyone in Thailand would need a new driving license, then you would actually get a free Swenson's ice cream, and you see Swenson's ice cream up there. It was put forward by Thai Wrath, a newspaper that's still going, and it was meant as a joke. It wasn't meant to take it seriously, and yet there were a number of people who turned up to Swenson's asking where their free raspberry rapple or chocolate mudslide was. So it just shows you even something as outlandish as everyone in Thailand to take a new driving test in preparation for all traffic moving to the other side of the road, drive on the right, not the left. I always get that mixed up. Was there. So it's just an example of a joke that was, you wouldn't think anyone would believe, but in fact some did. Another joke about in 2013, in April, which was the 101st anniversary of the Titanic disaster. The story was put round by in English and in Thai, that the last survivor of the Titanic disaster had died on Jomtien Beach. In the evening, the cool collected, the sun was going down with a view of Koh Larn, and she died. This story was told of how, at the age of 1, on the sloping decks of the Titanic 101 years ago, she'd been thrown into a lifeboat, had an interesting life though, and she'd married a Thai late in life, retired to Jomtien, and this was the only story about the Titanic ever been told that didn't show a picture of the Titanic. Whenever you see the Titanic, you always get that picture of the 4 funnels, or sometimes it's ended up. No picture of the Titanic. Instead, it showed this. Next photo, please. It showed that, which is the arm of the lady who died 101 in Jomtien. Must be true, because that's a picture of the arm. You might think again that no one would believe such nonsense, but remember the Titanic's big news and whatever is published about it's there. There were a number of emails to the newspapers here asking when the funeral would be. So some people must have believed it. So incidentally, the Titanic has given rise to more fake news than almost anything else other than the world wars. You know, the idea that the 4 cats on the Titanic at Queenstown, which was its last port of call in Ireland before it went into the Atlantic, the 4 cats got off, you know, because they knew what was going to happen. And so they were carrying the kittens in their mouths. They all descended onto the quayside. Well, there are many pictures of these cats, but of course it's fake news. Other fake news is that there's a ship only 4 miles away that could have saved everybody if it hadn't gone to sleep. And well, it's a complex story, that the California and the ship that lay near the Titanic. But there's no way, whatever view you take of that story, and we haven't time to go into it now, to think they could have ever saved anyone, because they couldn't. It's worthwhile, I think, spending just a few minutes going back into history to see just how embedded in our culture fake news always was. More so now because of that, yes, but it's by no means a new phenomenon. as I began to say before, an early one must be the Ten Commandments, if you think about it. Here are the Israelites, they get kicked out of Egypt. On the way, they murder 200 Egyptians in chariots crossing the Red Sea. They then spend 40 years in the desert, fighting other tribes, raping their women, stealing land is the only way to survive in such a society. And then after 40 years, they get to Mount Sinai, don't they? And a burning bush tells them, sorry, none of that's kosher anymore. It's off. Harboring, wanting your neighbour's wife, no killing, no having gods before me. Well, there's something very odd about all that. Someone's trying to pull your leg, or they are, in my opinion anyway. Or you move forward 2,000, 3,000 years to Cleopatra. She's an interesting example of ancient fake news. Next slide, please. No, oh, that missed one. You're quite right, it's my fault. There's the Ten Commandments. We'll move on to the next one. Interesting Cleopatra, one of the most the famous Cleopatra. That. It's from blow up from a coin published in her lifetime. By her, not by her enemies, the Romans. A very clever propagandist at the time was Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor. There was called Octavian before he became emperor. And he had to conquer Cleopatra and Mark Antony, her lover, in order to rule the Roman Empire uncontested, because they controlled Cleopatra, much of what became the Eastern Roman Empire and North Africa. And Augustus put around a story, the Roman emperor, that she wanted to move the capital of the Roman Empire to Alexandria, for which there's no evidence, and she was very beautiful. So she'd had sex with various Roman generals, and her beauty had to be seen to be believed, and the Roman sources printed all this, like Livy and Virgil and the other henchmen of Augustus. And then you look at her, well, she's quite a plain... quite a plain-looking woman, really, you know, and it was done by Augustus to justify, really, his campaign against her, and very cleverly done. But the idea that Cleopatra was looked something like Elizabeth Taylor in 1963, or Rhonda Fleming in 1953, a much better movie called, I've forgotten the name of it, but the representations of Cleopatra are always as a beautiful woman. It all comes from Augustus Caesar. It doesn't come from contemporary sources that actually show what she looked like. You move on thousands of years, look at the Reformation in the 16th century. They just invented printing. That was a big leap forward, a bit like the internet in our own time. Printing was meant that more people, not many admittedly, had to be able to read, but a lot more people than before. And this led to the sort of scandal, is it going to pervert the world? Is this the end of civilization? That you hear now often about fake news. The Protestants said that the Pope should be shot, whatever they did in those days. He was the whore of Babylon, and the Catholic Church would reply that to read the Bible in translation, translated to English, German or French, would result in a permanent consignment to hell. And it was a blow-up, almost equivalent to what we see today, but amongst the classes that could read. The difference now is that everybody can join in, not only the lucky ones. So you move forward, and I won't want to spend long on others, other than to conclude with the world wars in the 20th century. In 1915, the Germans sank a British passenger liner, the Lusitania, and they struck a medal to show how justified this was, because it was full of contraband shells and bullets ready to go to the Western Front in World War, so it was justified. The British dismissed this as fake news, and then, lo and behold, when divers went down in the 1950s, it's not very deep, the Lusitania, there's nothing left of it now because it's in a fast current area. When they went down, there were indeed shells and bullets on the floor of the location of the Lusitania. So it just shows you that fake news can follow fake news. Or come on to World War II, then Hitler, he only had one ball. It's amazing how that's survived, isn't it? I mean, people today still believe it too, or that the tragedy of Lord Haw Haw, who was the last American to be hanged by the British for war propaganda. He went to Germany at the beginning of the war, but he wasn't really British. I mean, he was born of Irish parents in Queens, New York, 1906. Not British, but he had made the mistake when he filled in the form to have a British passport when he was an adult. He foolishly, wrongly and badly said he'd been born in London. He hadn't. He'd been born in New York. And on that basis, he was hanged for treason. It's quite interesting that the offence at the time of answering a question wrongly on a British passport application was a fine of £2, not having your neck stretched, which just shows you have to be careful how you go, because he did produce an awful lot of propaganda on behalf of the Nazis. But whether it was all believed or not, you read the books about these things, a lot of people in England found him vaguely amusing rather than particularly dangerous. Coming back to Pattaya, which is what we're supposed to be talking about, even before the internet, there was fake news circulating about Pattaya. For example, the end of the American wars in Southeast Asia in 1975, and they're no longer able to bomb Cambodia and so on, the Americans' troops left. And the New York Times, no, I think it was the Washington Post, had a long article to say, well, that's the end of these R&R resorts, you know, where Americans go to have sex in a day off and so on, such as Pattaya. It's finished, you know, that's it. Nobody will want to go there anymore. The Americans are leaving, there'll be nobody there. And they predicted the end of what was then a very small area. Didn't exactly happen, did it? Or there's the AIDS wipeout of the 1980s. The British Medical Council formally warned people not to go to some places. This was one, on the grounds that people were more or less dropping dead in the streets and AIDS would wipe out the population, and you'd only have sort of a marker on a map, a bit like Boot Hill in an American Western, with everyone dead. It's quite remarkable from the British Medical Council, but it's there from 1989. Or very locally, there was fake news put about here by travel agents. In the very early days, when condos were first available, say 1991 and 2, condos were available for you to buy in your own name. This was a tremendous thing at the time. You can actually buy a condo in your own name. And the first two were the one in South Pattaya. I've forgotten the name of that now, on the South Road there, Pattaya, whatever they call it, Pattaya, yes, that's it, yeah, anyway. And also a condo Yensabai nearby. A lot of people who bought condos were very disappointed to find out that there's no TV channel, and only one in Thai, and no movie channel. What would you do at night when you didn't want to go out? No movie channel. So they complained to one or two local estate agents, said, you know, there's no movie channels when we turn over anything. And the story put round by these estate agents was, well, you couldn't in that part of Pattaya, especially near Condo Yensabai. It would be unthinkable. Why is that? Well, they said, you see, there's a Hindu temple nearby, and they wouldn't possibly countenance anything like that. And this seriously was an issue about buying condos in the early 1990s. By the turn of the century, and by about 2005, there were 5 at least Pattaya newspapers. There might have been more at one time. It was the beginnings of the internet, but not many people spotted that the days of newspapers would be finished. And there was interesting examples of fake news there. In 2006, the British government very kindly gave me an MBE for the work I'd done here on their behalf for some years. And the Pattaya Times, run by a man called Drew Noyes, some of you may remember him, published an article misunderstanding what the MBE meant. It's just a low-level thank you for your service. It was also given in the same year for the lady from Liverpool who'd worked in the same chip shop for 25 years. You know, it's given to the public, you know. And the Pattaya Times misunderstood and said from now on I was to be referred to as Sir Barry Kenyon, Sir Barry Kenyon, you know, giving me a knighthood as well into it. So that was clearly fake news, and it caused me a lot of hassle at the time, people trying taking the piss out of me and so on. So was it an honest fake news, or since Drew Noyes may not have liked me much, was it something else? I'll leave it to you to think about. There's also Pattaya people at the time showed swarms of tourists hitting Pattaya. Could I have the next slide, please? But they, oh yeah, it's jumped. One back. And this was the photo of Pattaya people, probably just an honest mistake. This is the packed beach at the time when they were advertising. They got the wrong photo. In fact, it was not many people there. There was also Pattaya Today, another newspaper at the time, and the famous curry bird. Did you hear about that? What somebody had done was smear a large seabird entirely with yellow curry and pass it off as an extinct species that had turned up in a forest area of Phuket. It only was discovered once the bird began to lick off the curry and showed the deviates. Next slide, please. Yeah, I put that in to show that a Pattaya Sun, which was a newspaper that didn't last very long, actually printed several editions upside down. So when you looked at the newspaper, you had to turn it upside down, and on one occasion back to front. So you see, it wasn't that professional always in those days. And number 8, next slide please. This was from the Pattaya Mail, showing you some Australians who were all arrested for gambling in about 2008, I think it was. But I think the photo, not quite about Australians attending gambling and illegal orgies. Okay, thank you. By about 2020, of course, the social media was very dominant. One of the most famous stories involved me in 2016. Next slide, please. And we were at the Bridge Club, the famous Pattaya Bridge Club scandal, and it was 32 of us were arrested, but not by the police. They knew we weren't gambling. The Bridge Club was registered. They knew that. They weren't there. It was the Civilian Licensing Authority and the Army, 2 of whom had AK-47s, in case any of the ladies over 80 would threaten anyone. They marched up and said that they had information. There was even a roulette table. They looked for that, but they couldn't find it. Too many packs of cards here. Anyone with all these cards, bad news. And not all of them have been stamped in Thailand, you know, and all that kind of thing. And off we went to the police station, who had no choice but to admit us, even though they had a smile on their face. And there we were. That's the group. We were there 10 hours. And then they decided it was a bit of a mistake and they let us all go. But the press didn't want to know that. Far better to say that me, and not that I ran the Bridge Club in those days and still don't, the vice consul, that was me, V-I-C-E, been arrested and deported. I'd never been a vice consul, never had that label anyway. Or that we would be banned from Thailand forever, or that all sorts of nasties would occur. And the English press was full of it. You know what, everyone's famous 15 minutes. You remember that, Andy Warhol? Well, that was the 15 minutes when Pattaya Bridge Club was famous. There was another case about the same time of fake news where they publicised, particularly in England, I think, rather than here, about a UK diplomat who'd come over here and never seen any signs of prostitution, though she'd been in Pattaya only one night. No sign of it at all, but they forgot to point out that she'd stayed in the Royal Cliff and never moved outside it, so good marks to the Royal Cliff there. And then there were the stories about the tsunami, which you remember in 2014, terrible thing in Phuket. And a lot of press reports here and in the UK suggested that Thailand would be hit. with reduced numbers of tourists because it might happen here, ignoring the fact that although anything can happen in Pattaya, of course a tsunami can't, because if you know how tsunamis operate, they don't come past islands and all that sort of thing. Couldn't happen. Or Ghost Town Pattaya, you remember that, 2019, when the COVID scare began. Pattaya would never have a future, be a ghost town, and that was the end of it. Everyone would be closed. Well, it didn't really quite work out like that. You can say that it's not got back to what it used to be, but then time moves on anyway. You never would recreate it. Or more recently, the collapse of the building, the audit building in Bangkok, 25,000 people were killed in Pattaya. In fact, none were killed in Pattaya when that building collapsed last March. And the price of property would collapse in Pattaya and all that. So in other words, you know, there's an awful lot of stuff out there, and those are 4 examples from about 30 million that could be given. Do people actually believe it? I keep coming back to that all the time. Next slide, please. This is doom scrolling. You know, I guess you know what doom scrolling is. It's being obsessed with bad news and wanting to read more of it. She's doing it in the middle of the night. How many people here, put your hand up, have ever doom scrolled at 3 a.m. when you can't get off to sleep? You look through and depress yourself more and more by doom scrolling, looking for bad news as you go on. And so that's a feature of our time, because according to the research, you know, about 3 or 4 people out of 10 are regular doom scrollers, which means there must be about 20 in this room now. So there you go. You believe, I think, what you want to believe. That's my take on all this. If it fits in with what you want to believe, then you're likely to believe it. If you don't, if you're dubious of it, then you don't. And this is the issue for Facebook and YouTube and all the others. You see it every day. I saw yesterday that the grass is greener in Cambodia and Vietnam than it is here. Better to retire there to Cambodia and Vietnam. Well, I've lived in both countries and been quite recently to both. Not that recently, but fairly. I think people can be quite naive about all that. For example, Vietnam doesn't have 1-year visas to start with. But there we go. It's happening all the time. The visa issue, there's been a lot of fake news about that recently. Does the government really want to get rid of everyone in this room? I doubt it, but there have been some people who've claimed on social media there's a campaign against you all, or against us all, to get rid of us all, including secret notes that are kept on you all, including whether you can speak Thai or not. How they would know that, I don't know. Perhaps they grade you 1 out of 10, no idea. Or the income tax scenario that you all know a lot about, still raging, I know, no one's quite sure, but it certainly was not the case, as was said in these halls even, these hallowed halls, that everyone would have to start paying tax on the 1st of January 20. It's much more complex, however you take of it. And my personal view is, I may be wrong, we're waiting for the King to sign a proclamation or possibly just go through the cabinet. I'll be very surprised. I've been surprised before, I can't guarantee it. My own opinion is that you can forget about it if you're moving money over within the first year or so of you having earned it or having appeared in your bank account. It's just my opinion. So for the future, well, you're going to get more doom scrolling. I'm afraid it's with us forever. There are 3 British newspapers, for example, the Daily Mail, the Sun and the Mirror, who have special sections on Thailand, mostly Pattaya, and they update regularly with all the horror stories, you know, people arrested for drugs, or you can't get the insurance because you haven't got your helmet on, and lots of other stuff. It's there, it's updated with the Sun. You even have to subscribe separately to receive this juicy information. You have to be a member of a club even to get it now. And it's with us. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to live with it. The idea, it could be, in fact, that fake news and doom scrolling are now the norm, as they were in World War II, rather than exceptional. It is clearly a very strong hold now. Social apps like Facebook and Facebook and all the other apps, the WhatsApp and all those, they are designed to make you stay longer, all sorts of tricks. They want you to remain and hit more times and read more stories, using artificial intelligence like algorithms, you know, to make sense of the data, echo chambers where you hear the same thing again and again and again and again. Echoes of Dr. Goebbels there, to be sure, repeating the same message. Trump's expert at it, on and on and on, so that eventually you accept it as normal. You look back at World War II, that's exactly what Dr. Goebbels did. So, in summary, I think there are probably 4 types of fake news. There's overt propaganda, there's clickbait, which could be propaganda, but the motives of it are different. It can be satire or a joke, not always necessarily a funny joke, but satire, I suppose, is a better word. There's a story, for example, to return to the Titanic momentarily, that the editor of the Blackpool Gazette in 1912, when it went down, said to his staff, I don't want a headline about the ship sinking and hitting an iceberg. I want something different. I want a headline in the Lancashire or Blackpool Gazette that will make people read it. You know, they know it hit an iceberg, forget all that. And so his staff came up with the headline, Blackpool man hurts arm in sea accident. So there you go. That's the trivial local newspaper at its most triumphant. And lastly, of course, fake news can be just a mistake. Lots of honest mistakes are made in fake news. I mentioned 1 or 2 earlier. I just lastly finish with the fake news. I haven't done much fake news, deliberately anyway, in my life, but I did have a go once, and my God, did it get me into trouble. So I'll just show you that lastly. The 11th final slide. Yeah, that's it. And I very foolishly was lured into doing a fake story, April 1st. Some of you may remember it, it's a good many years ago now, on how the British Embassy, which was then selling its property in Bangkok, was going to move to Pattaya. Going to move lock, stock and barrel to Pattaya. Not only that, they were going to move into Soi 6, on the grounds that there are plenty of nightclubs and bars there, so when people were pissed as a newt or wanted any assistance, the help would be in the same street, you know. And people replied to this, even sent emails in. What property were they going to buy? It's all nightclubs. I said, well, probably the Queen Vic Inn. He was a bit horrified, Vic and his wife, to hear this, but they accepted. Now, you might think that that was, no one will believe that. I didn't believe they would. My goodness me, was I wrong. I got a very rude letter off the embassy indeed. I even got a visit from the fake news division of the Ministry of, what do they call it? Ministry of Economics, I think, had the fake news section. And I was roundly, I think, probably booed generally for putting such a tasteless thing on, even though it was meant as a joke. It just goes to show you that you can make of it what you like, but other people will make of it what they like as well. Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions? Pop your hand up and we'll come over.
About anything, I don't mind.
Any questions for Sir Barry Kenyon?
Have one here.
I think sometimes fake news can come from simply lazy journalism.
Yes.
My grandmother was if you mentioned the Titanic, my grandmother was a survivor of a similar event called the Eastland disaster in Chicago. Oh, and it turned out she was the second to last survivor of it. And unfortunately, about 6 months before she died, the third to last survivor of it, his family had told the newspaper that she was the last and final survivor. And when I contacted the newspaper and told them, no, this is not the case, and this was a major newspaper in Chicago, they were like, it's no big deal. They didn't retract it.
Oh, just a little thing, Barry. I think you said the tsunami 2014. I think that's fake news. I think it was 2004 for the tsunami.
I'm glad you picked that up. A deliberate mistake, that wasn't it?
Just here.
Hi Barry,
Thanks,
just a change of subject. A friend of mine we saw on a Sunday, he's opening a bank account here. And I said, well, you'll have no problems at all. He said, I'm having a big problem. But anyhow, he found out he can go to Bangkok Bank, but he must have insurance if he opens an account in Bangkok Bank. So he went along, him and his friend, and he was at one window and he had to pay 500 baht for an insurance. And his friend, who was 2 windows along, he had to pay 700 baht for insurance. So, have you heard anything about that?
Well, not a new thing. Several banks, notoriously Thailand's the biggest, the Bangkok Bank, have been asking anyone who opens an account that in case you take the insurance on the account so that in theory if someone cheats you can get the money back more easily from the bank. It's not a new thing, it's been going on a long time. The bigger issue is whether they were allowed to open a bank account these days, which I'm sure the subject many of you know about.
Hi. Yeah, hi Barry. Thanks very much for very informative. I think we've known each other for quite a long time over the years. So I want to know, when you said you lost 30 kilos, was that fake news, or if it was true, which it probably is, perhaps you can tell us all how you did it.
Well, it is fake news. I daren't tell you. I've actually lost 40 kilos. I went up to 125 kilos when I gave up smoking. I mean, I had several breakfasts, you know. I had one breakfast and then went down the road for another. Terrible, giving up smoking. Went to 125. And this morning on the scales, I was 82. So there you are.
Well done.
Is it difficult? Well, I'm going to swear it's bloody difficult. Yes, it wasn't I know you can be very ill and all that. I just had to give up everything I like without going into further details. The mudslide, you know, chocolate mudslide, I did mention it.
Hi. This is my first time here, but my question is how many friends have you made bringing religion into fake news?
Sorry, mister.
How many friends have you made bringing religion into fake news?
Probably none. But if I've upset anyone, then I apologise sincerely. I'm an atheist and probably it was ill-advised. I apologise to you.
No, I just wanted to mention you're talking about fake news and so forth, but a long time ago, we occasionally were interviewed by reporters. And I remember my top boss in Washington, D.C., made the comment, he said, the only good that can come out of that is if they quote you accurately, which most of the time they don't.
Yeah, that's a good. Nowadays, of course, if you're interviewed, you can record it on your phone, and that might help things. I've got a non-fake news, but really an anticipatory thing. What's the story about any vibe on this license thing and the driver's license and having a blah blah blah? Yeah,
It's the idea, I'm sure many of you know, that 2 offices in Thailand have changed the rules. The 2 offices are Rayong and Banglamung, the one most of us use. And the argument was that they published a handout that seemed to suggest that you had to have more than 1 year left on your visa, more than 1 year left when you went to renew your driving license. Well, there are not many people who have more than 1 year. I suppose you could argue a 1-year retirement visa if you went early, you know, something that would be a year plus a bit because you were early, or maybe you had a long-term residence visa which lasts for 10 years, 5, blah, blah, blah. I can only say that they've not enforced it. And in theory, we're waiting to hear and people anything further, and they may just ignore it. I think it was a confusing press release that they issued that talked about short term and a year, and nothing, as far as I'm aware, has really happened. People in the room may be able to contradict me, but so far the people I've known said to me that with a 1-year visa, you will still no trouble renewing as before. The people who can't have a 5-year visa, which is what most of you have in this room if you're expats, are people on tourist visas, and significantly the new destination Thailand visa, which is 5 years, but you have to keep leaving the country every 6 months. So 6 months is less than 1 year, and many people, well, I think too, that there's a confusion by somebody in the Land Transportation Department. They were meaning to say, if it's less than a year, like a DTV is never more than 6 months, then you will be limited to 2 years, never 5. That's my interpretation of it anyway.
For those of you who don't know, when you go for driver's license in Thailand, you get 5 years driver's license if you live here and stuff, and then you got to renew every 5 years.
Barry, thank you very much. That was interesting. That was. I'm wondering if you can tell us about any fake news stories in terms of fake news stories about Walking Street, because that's like, how do you know what's real and what's not? Do you have any stories about any stories that went around over the history of Walking Street that were absolutely fake news?
Yes, there have been one or two that actually said it had closed down. There were some press reports, can't remember now, it's a long time ago, and I can't even remember the tsunami, as was pointed out earlier, but it's a long time ago, where there were press reports in England saying it had closed, and in Thailand saying it was about to close, because the government were retaking all those bars that adjoin the sea, you know, on that side, as it were, and they're all illegally built, and nobody can own that sort of land, and so on. That was one story that was certainly fake news. There's also, on a weekly basis, minor fake news by people putting stories on the social media to say that some bars closed when it hasn't, in order to, you know, deter people, or the girls are more beautiful at this bar rather than that, or the other. There's a lot of that goes on, but I know that's not what you meant.
Hi, I think one thing that we didn't hear today is that a lot of so-called fake news is really just a politician or somebody else who doesn't like what's being reported, and it's not really fake. So there's a difference between kind of April Fool's type fake news, or the Indian photo that may or may not be racist, and legitimate news that comes out and somebody doesn't agree with it, and they say it's fake.
Indeed.
Any more?
Well, a round of applause for this non-fake presentation. I wondered about this. I was about to say it'd be nice to hear from Peter Malhotra, the publisher of Pattaya Mail, who keeps fakely promising to give a talk here about his 50 years in Pattaya and stuff. So is it fake news you're going to give a talk, or is it real?
It's real. It's real. I'm working on it. It's been I've had a long life, and I could tell you stories going back to 1967, when I first came to Utapao to start working. And then I went to Takli and to Lopburi and back to Bangkok, and somehow ended up in Pattaya again. I'm looking for photographs, right? And I'm looking for old photographs. And there's the particular one that I want to show everybody, is when I was working in Utapao as a young kid. We had these American pilots as our customers. It was a tailor shop. And I asked them whether I could visit the B-52. And he said, sure, I'll go check with the commander. He did, and he made an appointment for the weekend. So my father, my mother, my elder brother, and myself, we went into the base, and we visited the B-52. And this is a fact, this is a true story, and without telling you that story, without the picture, I don't want to tell you the story, but we had pictures taken. I was in the back playing with the guns and all that stuff, you know. In those days, it was before the terrorism and all that stuff, right? So it wasn't that difficult. But I will come back, putting together all these old photographs of my life, where I was in Pattaya back in '75. Many things to tell. many things to tell. Old hoteliers, my good friend Philip here, who ran the...
Stand up, Philip. You're going to give a talk at this club too. Bonjour, Philippe.
Old-timer, been here for 40 years, was the general manager of the Siam Bay Shore, the Cape Dara, the Siam Bay View, and then he was in Rayong Resort, he was in Burma, and now he's a resident. He knows of the expat club. He's known it for 40 years, as long as we're here, but he's never been here. This is his first time, so I'm sure he'll be back. Anyway, I will do that. In September, I would have lived here, I will, if I stay here that long. In September, it'll be exactly 50 years since I came to Pattaya. So there's a lot of things to tell. But
a few of us here wish we could say that, to tell you the truth.
But I wanted to tell the story about Walking Street. It's not fake news, but it's true that back then it was just a fishing village, and all the land on the beach side, it's actually sit ven kun, which means you don't particularly own the land title deeds, because in Thailand, all the seashore along the beach, whatever you call it, belongs to the Navy. So you can't buy land there, and it's not, you don't get title deeds. But these people who have lived there for 100 years, all fishermen, of course, they went out for, the whole thing was a fishing village, South Pattaya and beyond. They would take their boats out to go fishing, and then slowly it developed during the American days. Go-go bars open, restaurants open, and all that stuff. But today, even today, that whole area on the beach side, they don't have title deeds. But they're selling property on that side for hundreds of millions of baht, changing hands. And if you go to Walking Street now, which we call the Strip back then, it was just South Pattaya, it's become an Indian town. They've got big, huge discos and restaurants and God knows what. Anyway, that 101, it's called the 101 property. That whole side is 101, and it's still pending in the courts. They're still trying to get rid of it, but the people who live in Walking Street in South Pattaya are fighting it. And that is why they keep developing it. They keep developing it, made it Walking Street, tiled it, made it look nice, changed all the buildings and everything. They said that if we keep that whole area as the traditional Thai or the traditional Pattaya that it was 50, 60, 70 years ago, maybe they'll think it's a historical site. But if they came to look at it now, it's more of a whatever it is today. But yes, that is not fake news, that is true. And if the government decides one day they're going to tear down the whole side, on the beach side, they can still do that. And I will be back.
Talking about being back, we've got to get Barry Kenyon up here to give us a small token of our deep appreciation on fake news in Pattaya. All right. Do you want to do what is the correct pronunciation of Pattaya? Pattaya?
Pattaya.
So he says. Thanks, Barry. It's always a great pleasure to have you here. And as I say, check out any article that Barry writes for the Pattaya Mail. It's a wonderful thing to subscribe to and get daily emails from. Now,